Hello and welcome back to another video by Cyber Squad Gaming. Today we're going to be working on leveling up our Hardspace Shipbreaker from a level 2 to a level 3, and I'm going to be using commentary over the video to show you some tips and hints as we go through to earn some easy cash and how to strip down these Mackerel Class vessels. So the first hint I have is let's go ahead and take those nacelles off. At the end of the day, there's 2 of them on every ship. It's 1 tether each, and we just chop them in one place and they come off. And that's some easy, quick cash, and we just load those straight onto the barges. And this is the first thing that I do every time I get to one of these vessels.
Let's see if they're on to something. Complete your work order and return here to your hab when you're ready for another ship. And careful with that reactor. One false move and you're a goner. And a whole lot of credit for her. Good luck, Cutter. Weaver out.
Now that we've done the nacelles, we can just go ahead and rip those 2 antennas off. I think the running joke at the start of the game is you only had to strip 1,000,000 of them to make your money back. But, you know, 2 of them works, and if we're going to just pay for our tethers and extra oxygen and things like that, we might as well just strip them off. It's quick 2 seconds and we move on. And then the first step is to go inside the vessel. We're going to go inside and see if we can't find any extra goods like oxygen and things like that.
Airlock pressure levels increasing.
So this is the transport mackerel class. There's 2. There's the cargo and the transport. The transport actually is the one with the seats, and it's important that we use the transport one at this stage because the certification in order to get to level 3 requires us to remove 15 seats. So this is going to be key. So first thing we do when we get into the vessel is we look up and down and we see, is there any fuel we need? Is there any oxygen? A good tip at this point is only take oxygen when you need it. It refills your entire oxygen bar. And then the other tip is to make sure once you've done a quick look and you've seen the lay of the land, you always shut in the second airlock. Otherwise there's a chance of depressurization. Now I always check the cockpit. I don't know why. Every time I've been in there, there happens to be nothing in there. I think one time there was a video recorder that I got to listen to. So what I've been doing recently is opening up the cockpit. It forms part of the rest of the vessel, and then when I decompress everything, I kind of decompress the whole vessel in one go, and I vent everything because the rooms are connected. Now as we go through some of these Mackerel Class vessels, we're going to encounter doors, and these doors aren't movable, they're not openable, so the only way to get through them is to cut them. Now they remove pretty easy. You just put a laser bolt either side, or sometimes you can put a laser bolt through the left side, which is the hinges, and it opens up. I tried hitting it there with the push ability. It did move it, but I'm about to show you a much easier way of opening it that saves you a lot of time.
Air pressure level decreasing.
So there you go, we cut the left hinges off and now it's just floating free. We can send that to the processor when we're ready to, but for right now, my first priority on this vessel is to extract out the core. Once I get the core out, I got one of the most volatile elements out of the vessel for when I start stripping more. Now these Mackerel Class vessels are really easy to get the level 1 reactor out. You cut 2 supports, you push down the floor, and you'll already expose the core. Then it's a case of just tethering up to it, ripping it out in one go, and we're done. And this is a really easy way to take the core out. One thing you'll notice as you get more and more into the game is you're going to want more and more tethers, so get the tether upgrades as soon as you can. I easily am going through 15 to 20 tethers trying to strip these ships out, and it saves if you don't have to constantly keep buying more. So there we go, we tether that out, down it comes, and we are one efficient shipbreaker. Now the next step is we need to see what else we've got to get. And we have to get a power cell, and we have to get some more metals processed. So this vessel is a 2-shell vessel. It's got 2 outer shells, a back end that's completed as a shell, and a front end cockpit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to strip off the 4 internal bolts that connect the back, and we're just going to take the whole back end of the vessel away, exposing all of the fuel cells, the coolant, and the power cells down the sides of the vessels, and we can just start peeling this vessel like a tin can. So there we go, we took the 4 bolts off. Now we're going to attach a tether, and we're going to take this whole back end off for processing. We could be really picky about putting each part in the furnace or into the nano thing. We can even break the back thruster off and dispose of that. But at this point, if you send a large chunk of the vessel to a processing area, what happens is things that can be accepted the processing area are accepted and you paid for them, and other things are rejected and you lose the ability to get paid for them. But that's fine, because at the end of the day, it's quick. So now you saw us pull out the side of the fuel cell, and I fired it into the wrong place. It went off in a big explosion. I was lucky I wasn't closer. I got confused with the back end saying processing. Actually, those fuel cells go down to the barge. And on the top left, you can now see how we got paid for a chunk of that material, but not all of it. And that's what I was talking about earlier. So let's go ahead now and rip out the other fuel cell. This time we'll keep it a little further away from ourselves, and we're going to take this down. As it's ignitable at this point, you can see the fuel coming out of it, and we're going to fire that to the barge.
Salvage secured. Credits deposited.
Now you can see that we've exposed the outer hull. The 2 sides of the vessel can now be peeled away. So inside these areas on either side, we actually have the ability to cut them free. So what I'm looking for now is, where is the power cell? They're up inside, and I found it to the right at the back, just before the cockpit. So this objects view is great. We're looking around. There's the coolant, we've seen electrical systems, and right now I'm looking for the power cell. But when you get to more larger vessels, you're going to need the ability to search for individual components, track fuel lines, track coolant lines, because if you cut a fuel line or you cut a coolant line, do you send the reactor into overload? Do you end up burning more and more of the fuel with your cutting instruments? So at this point, I kind of figured out that I want to go grab a few of these seats before I go after the power cell. So I'm going to take a few of these out and fire them onto the barge, because we've got to get 15 of them, and it's important that we maximize how many we get out of this vessel. So at this point I realized I'm really low on oxygen, and I quickly made a dash to go get some more oxygen, and as you can see, I got full oxygen again. So this is why leaving them until when you need them is important, otherwise you're going to have to buy them. So I decided to abandon getting the chairs for a second. I said, you know what, let's just focus on ripping the side of the vessel off, and maybe that's going to expose a side that we can get the chairs out. So I decided to go up the right hand side, cutting these bolts. The bolts are along the bottom, and at the very last one, at the very end, the bolts are at the bottom and the top. Now what we're doing here is basically disconnecting the outer shell from the inner shell. So you're positioning yourself, move past the power cell, go past the coolant, and we're going to basically be able to peel this whole side off, exposing the whole right hand side of this Mackerel Class vessel. Now this is why I said tethers are so important, because there's no way you can pull off and move them manually. Tethers are an essential part, but look, each one of these just gets fired off one after another, Make sure you don't get hit by them. Moving objects will hit you. Later in the video, you'll see me get hit by one and take it into the processing plant, and let's just say it didn't end very well for me.
Object accepted for processing. Credits deposited.
Now you can see we've exposed the whole right hand side of the vessel. So we're going to cut these last couple of bolts, we're going to take this last piece away, and then we're going to go back and get the power cell and we're going to get the coolant. Now be careful pulling this out because this is going to spark you, and I got shocked. What you really want to do is try and be a little further away from it when you pull it out. I was marginally too close, and let's just say I've now got fried eyebrows.
Account credit applied.
And while we're here, we might as well get the coolant because at the end of the day we got to pay off that $1 billion of debt. So might as well get every single piece of salvage we can. So this being my first real Mackerel Class vessel, I was still trying to figure out the best way to take it apart. Now what I did on the right side of the vessel, I can do on the left side of the vessel. But later in the video, when we move on to the secondary mackerel, which is a cargo mackerel, I'll actually show you how I stripped it down and even burnt the actual front end, back end, cockpit, and even the actual substructures to absolute nothing was left. So at this part in the video, I'm going to skip ahead. Rather than you see me break down multiple mackerels, what I'm going to do is skip ahead and show you different parts of the mackerel I break down. What a cargo mackerel looks like, what a inner hull looks like fully broken down, and how to buy fuel and tethers while you're still operating. So you join us back now, and we're going to go inside a cargo-based mackerel. So inside, I picked one of these because I wanted to get more salvage, but there was no transport one available. So there's no chairs in here or furniture which you have to get for your Cert 3 level, but you might as well come in here, rip it all out. But there's a ton of supplies. There's a tape recording we can listen to, there's fuel, repair kits that you'll need when you go back to the hub. There's a ton of cargo. So this is more like a supply one when you need to get more supplies. But the basic mackerel design of an inner core back end where you can pull the reactor out and a left and right outer shell that you can peel back is all the same. Now, I actually remove things a little differently on this class of dredge, so I just want to show you what I'm doing. I basically strip the floor out. Rather than taking the back end off and removing that, which you can do, I strip the floor out because the floor, even though you'll have to do the back end already, the floor allows you to access all the cargo and just drag it straight down. So here you'll see I take this floor out, I ping them over with the tether, and then you'll see my ability to go underneath the vessel and just pull all the cargo straight down to the barge. I skipped ahead a little bit there just so you didn't have to see me pull out everything, but now you can see it fully exposed underneath of the barge. You can go ahead and pull all that down. You can then remove the last panel and go ahead and pull down the reactor, and this makes life so much easier. I got a forklift truck here, and boy was that heavy, so I had to go ahead and use a tether to send that to the barge, but that's how you take a cargo ship, or what I think the most efficient way to strip the underneath of a cargo ship is.
Make your way back to the kiosk on the starting platform to fill up your own tube. Blue ain't your coming.
So you may have just heard that he's trying to tell you to go back and get fuel. Well, actually, this is that little panel that when you go back, you press activate on it, and all of a sudden you can buy oxygen, you can buy tethers, you can buy fuel, and you can actually stay out longer in order to get more of the vessel. Now, there's a couple of indicators of where you are with the vessel that add to all this, right? Your tether count on the left, but then also your fuel count down the bottom, and you've got fuel and thruster count. But what you don't know, or maybe what you haven't figured out yet, is that bar at the very top, which we'll see in just a second, is actually the total amount of the vessel that's been salvaged. So right now we've done about, I don't know, 15% of the vessel. Also, on the top right, that 5 minutes is how long you have in this total simulation of this day that you're allowed to work out here on this vessel. So if you have a vessel for 2 days, you're allowed to come out twice. But it allows you to see how much you want to actually remove and at which stage you could keep getting more out of the vessel. So now I'm going to show you one of the hazards of space work. I am sitting here and I'm like, this isn't moving, I'm going to go drag this into the processor. Well, I didn't realize the processor has a suction to it. So I turn around and I try and escape, my screen flickers, and all I realize is I'm not moving forward anymore. And I start going, uh-oh, I'm starting to get hands coming up on the top of the screen. What do? I try going down, I try accelerating up, I try getting out of it. I try my grapple at one point to see if I can pull out further away. But none of this worked. So eventually I accepted my fate and I died, which cost me 150,000 credits in order to respawn. The death system is pretty forgiving. I died, you press E, activate, and you come back, which is really quite simple. You see me there just fighting and fighting and fighting. I'm trying to find any way to grip things. I'm hitting buttons. I'm like, how do I get out of this? But at the end of the day, if this happened to you, just respawn, pay the 150 grand, and you keep moving forward. Now that's worth noting this is that what I found out though is when you die, all your equipment takes damage. So my grapple here is at 65, 70%. It dropped to 30% once I had died. Now this is kind of, here you go, here's my death. This is fine, I respawn, but you can see that now has a really cool effect on the grapple and the cutter. So you could now tell, okay, well, look at this smoke and the sparks coming off it. It's damaged. And this is probably your key indicator that you need to go repair it at some point. And I think this is a cool graphical effect I wouldn't have found out unless I'd actually been sucked into the processing plant and got respawned, which really sucks. So this is the last mackerel I had to do. I got all my stuff, so I wanted to show you how you take the very end of it and just strip it to nothing. So I cut the cockpit away from the main vessel, I took all the sides off, and now I'm going to send this entire unit of soft metal to the furnace. And you set up multiple tethers. They stack, so the more tethers you put, the stronger they are, the faster they move, and I'm going to send this whole unit to the furnace. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the cockpit. Now I won't get all of the credit for this. You'll see as it goes into the unit that I lose a little bit, some soft metal in the cockpit, some nanocarbon in the main husk of the vessel, but it's worth it because it's quick and you get some money. So once again, thanks for checking out my video. I hope you really appreciate it and you enjoyed it. I'm going to try and do a few more of these as we go from level 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. So don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it and help the channel out.
Caution, tether supplies are low.
Object not accepted. Please revisit your training.